Hello everyone. Today's video is about how one can tell the difference between SIFO and things like Candida and SIBO. Just before jumping into the video, if you don't mind taking a quick moment to please like, share, subscribe, and or post a quick comment on the video, I'd really appreciate it. So thanks in advance for taking a second to do that. And as per usual, nothing I'm saying should be construed as medical advice. This is for informational purposes only. And if you need medical advice, please talk to your healthcare provider to get that advice. So someone posted a question on one of my other videos, and it was basically what I said in the intro there. How would you tell the difference between SIFO and things like Candida and SIBO? So thank you for the question. And I haven't had a question about digestive issues in a little while, so thank you for switching it up a little bit. I'm happy to talk about methylene blue and biofilms and the things that people ask about questions all the time, heavy metals, etc., but nice to switch over to the digestive realm for a little bit. So SIFO, for folks who are not familiar with that acronym, SIFO is small intestine fungal overgrowth, and interestingly enough, to my understanding, it's actually an overgrowth of Candida in the small intestine. So normally when we talk about Candida overgrowth, we're usually talking about Candida overgrowth in the large intestine, and of course Candida can grow in other places too, like in the mouth where it causes thrush, or in the vaginal canal where it could cause a yeast infection, or on the skin where it would cause some skin irritation and things like that. But not to be too cheeky with my reply, but Candida would be large, if we consider Candida to be more large intestine, SIFO would be Candida in the small intestine. And then SIBO, of course, is small intestine bacterial overgrowth. So, how would you contrast those things? So it's a good question. And quite frankly, in a lot of cases, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference clinically. They'd be exactly the same. They can all cause gas, bloating, abdominal pain. They could cause, potentially cause or contribute to reflux, heartburn. They could cause constipation and or diarrhea. So, constipation, diarrhea, or a mix of both. They could cause IBS symptoms or IBS-like symptoms, cause abdominal pain, and then sometimes cause systemic symptoms or like areas, symptoms rather, in areas outside of the digestive tract, like joint pain or fatigue or brain fog. So there's a lot of overlap between them. And so you might not be able to tell. So if the person asking the question was thinking like, man, there seems to be a lot of overlap. Well, very succinct or very astute rather observation that, yeah, absolutely, there's a lot of overlap. So, how can we tell the difference between them? Are there any differences? And there are some differences. So, one difference would be on lab testing. Run a SIBO test, lactulose breath test ideally, find SIBO, run a stool test, don't find any Candida. Well, there you go. It's SIBO, it's not a Candida issue. The challenge with SIFO, the small intestinal fungal overgrowth, is that there is, to my understanding, there is no commercially available test that definitively tests for SIFO. The studies that taught us about the existence of SIFO were done through upper endoscopies, so in intestinal aspirates. So basically, tube goes down the throat into the small intestine, suck out some juices, put it on growth medium or media, see what grows, and like, oh, we grew Candida out of the small intestine. That's not supposed to be there. Then there you go. That's what SIFO is. So that's not a commercially available test. Not a lot of people would probably want to sign up for that test anyways. So we can't really test for SIFO. I have heard a couple of clinicians talk about using organic acid tests as a roundabout way to test for SIFO, because with an organic acid test, you can look for certain metabolites that are produced by Candida. And so, they might say like, oh, if you find those in the urine, then maybe that's coming from SIFO. I suppose that if you found elevated yeast metabolites in the urine and had previously done a stool test for Candida and didn't find any, then maybe that would be a stronger bit of evidence that there was SIFO, but that's something that's really more speculative, and I don't think there's any definitive evidence showing that folks can use that test with any great degree of accuracy or clinical relevance. But it's, anyways, interesting idea, and maybe somebody out there is doing this all the time and they figured out a way to use it. So I'm not saying it's not a valid method, but just not aware of it being a validated method. So we really can't test for SIFO, and it's really something that's more speculative. Now, what we do know from the couple of studies out there on SIFO is that, if memory serves, it's somewhere between, oh my goodness, I'm a little rusty on the numbers here, but I think somewhere between like 33 and 40% of the time that they found SIFO, there was SIBO there as well. Or sorry, 33 to 40-ish% of the cases of SIBO had SIFO as well. That's what it is. And so if there's SIBO, then we have kind of probable cause that there might be Maybe that's not the right term. Anyways, we have some compelling circumstantial evidence that maybe there's SIFO afoot, but those numbers aren't, super stellar in that, like, oh, there's maybe a 33% chance or something like that that you have SIFO just because you have SIBO. So what it comes down to is how can we tell if there's SIFO? How can we figure that out clinically? Well, if there's yeast, whether it's small intestine or large intestine, then one of the things that will sometimes characterize that type of presentation is a major craving for sugar and sugar and carbs. Now, carbs and sweet things are just, quite frankly, delicious. A lot of people crave them, and they don't have SIFO or Candida in their large intestine or anything like that. And then a lot of people with SIBO might crave those things as well. But there does seem to be sort of a disproportionate craving tendency if there's a yeast overgrowth, based on my clinical experience and what I've heard from other clinicians as well who think about these things and treat these conditions. What's maybe a little bit less amorphous, a little bit more definitive, is that folks with SIFO or yeast in the large intestine might be more prone to having overblown, very fast reactions to eating refined sugar or other types of simple sugar. So if a person said, I drink a glass of juice and I bloat out to here in no time, that might be more of a clue that there's a small intestine fungal overgrowth. Or a person who says, I eat refined sugar and like all my symptoms flare up so badly, that might be a clue that there's more of a yeast overgrowth. It could still happen with just SIBO by itself, but it's just a little bit more of a clue that there might be a yeast overgrowth component. The other thing to consider is that if there are other obvious manifestations of yeast, so say a patient says, oh, I have all these digestive symptoms, the gas, bloating, the whole 9 yards, and I also get yeast infections all the time. It's like, well, it's a little bit more of a clue that maybe there's a yeast, dysbiosis in general in their body. Or if they say, oh, I have these like crazy rashes and it looks like a yeasty rash, or they're getting thrush or something, then that would be a bit of a clue that it could be a significant clue that there is more of a yeast overgrowth component. So we might be more suspicious of SIFO in a case like that, or yeast in the large intestine. So it's a lot of unknowns when it comes to SIFO and how that contrasts. So there, again, lots of overlap with these other dysbioses, but yeah, there are some clues. The other thing that might be a bit of a clue is if a patient, say has all these digestive issues, they go on a, say, anti-SIBO diet, they go on something like berberine, they go on, say, rifaximin, and they're just really not they're not having a full response to those treatments, or it doesn't help at all. That could be a clue, that would be quite a strong clue that there might be a yeast component. I find in my clinical experience that berberine doesn't tend to work that well for yeast, and rifaximin, to my understanding, doesn't kill yeast. Maybe it does. It seems to be a wonder antibiotic, but I don't know. I'm not aware of any evidence that it kills yeast. One other clue, this is a little bit of a, not a broadly applicable clue, but if a patient has a SIBO diagnosis and they go on an elemental diet and they feel a lot worse, like a lot more bloating and whatnot, that could be a big clue that there's a yeast overgrowth somewhere. Small intestine, large intestine, we don't know, but just all the simple sugars that are in that, it's a great formula to starve out the SIBO, but not a fantastic formula to starve out yeast. It can actually feed yeast to make things worse. Some people actually get thrush when they, drink this, elemental diet, these drinks all day. It can actually exacerbate yeast, which is why some clinicians will recommend using a straw so that you're trying to get it down the back of your throat as best you can, and hopefully avoiding, just more time with the sugar marinating in the mouth and maybe developing thrush. So I think that covered what I wanted to say. So I hope that this information was useful. If anybody has any questions on this topic or anything else, just post in the comment section below, and I will do my best to answer as soon as I can.